I'm going to share my screen and we're going to take a look at the agenda. Again, I'm joined by Jessica Bailey from the Bronx Borough Office, Chris Kermy from the Social Studies Department, and myself, Joe Schmidt, from the Social Studies Department. We're going to begin by just kind of going over a few things that are available to you in, for the most part, PDF form. Then we'll talk about where you can find those things, and then we'll get into the digital resources that we have been creating. I'm just going to stop sharing the screen for a sec. And I will apologize at this point and say, unfortunately, a lot of today is going to be kind of front of the room speaking. But again, for those of you just joining, we will have an opportunity for Q&A. So the first thing I want to go over are the resources that are currently available in PDF. And for the most part, those resources are available on WeTeach. And so, of course, we've got the scope and sequences. We have the K-8 passport guides. All the K-8 passport guides are available on WeTeach. Then there are all of the high school guides and tech sets. Currently, 9th grade units 1 through 4 is available. With the guide and tech set, we're working on getting unit 5 up and concurrent to what we're working on at the moment. And 10th grade units 1 through 5 are also available for guide and tech set on WeTeach. Hidden Voices, which is a resource to help you, if you're not familiar, bring in local profiles of people who have affected history who may not be in kind of traditional textbooks. Again, that's also available on WeTeach. Cultural guides for upcoming holidays and cultural events. Monuments and meanings, if you want to get students to begin thinking about some of the monuments and other memorials that are in and around New York City. It's a project to really get them to kind of think about what has been memorialized in the past and what they might add to what is memorialized at present or commemorated at present. Then of course there is the K-12 Civics for All curriculum. If you want to teach with some comic books, we have a couple of Civics for All comic books, and then some of the other Civics for All resources. If anyone has questions about any of these resources, please add a question to the chat so we can talk about that later today. So where can you find all of these things? For the most part, all of the things that I just mentioned are available on WeTeach, as long as you have your DOE login and username and password. You can access those materials. Just put something in the search. One of the things to note is if you have not been able to access, and I'll talk about this in a second, resources from TeachHub, when you get to the PDF resources on WeTeach, there is now a note that will make a PDF for directions to access materials on TeachHub available. So if you have questions about that after today, all you need to do is go in and enter, for instance, 9th grade unit 4 into the WeTeach, and there'll be a note that will make a PDF available for how to access resources. You can also get that by just searching Access Passport in the search bar, and you'll get that PDF. So I think what many of you are becoming familiar with is the TeachHub and the materials that are there. But for some of you, if you have not been able to access the new digital resources that the social studies team and others have been creating, I just want to kind of quickly go over where you can find those things. So the first thing you're going to do is go to Teach from Home on the DOE website, click on the sign in to TeachHub, and that will take you, once you sign in using your DOE username and password, to this. And what this is the larger Google Drive for all of the materials, add-ons, things like Zoom that have been made available since we have gone remote or gone into remote learning. And so just want to quickly show you, if you wanted to access, if you have not been able to yet access the resources that we've been working on for high school, you would click on that grade band. You'll be taken to a larger Google Drive. And then you go to Social Studies, which I'm having a hard time getting to. There we go. We've got the grade band, so 11th grade. And then each week, since we have been out, we have updated a folder. They're usually updated on Fridays, sometimes early on Monday for that upcoming week. And one of the things that we have moved over to, and I will show you in a second, is early on we were writing teacher-facing lesson plans that did have a section that was student-facing language, student-facing directions for the activities. The input, the feedback that we heard was that teachers would prefer to have Google Slides. And so for the last 3 weeks, we have been producing Google Slides. And so each week there will be at least 3 new sets of Google Slides for you to use in your classroom. And I'll show you an example of one of those Google Slides now. Here is one of the lessons that is being added. Part of the other reason I want to talk about this is because one of the things you will note upcoming as we move to the project that we're working on is that we are going to write each step of the project as a lesson plan into Google Slides. And so each task that I'm going to discuss in a minute that brings us to the culminating project will be in one of these Google Slides. And Jessica, my colleague, is going to kind of take us through the first lesson in just a second. But just to kind of show you, all of these lessons are written in the same template. We've made that template available for you in the folder. Chris, if you haven't had an opportunity, if more people have come in, if you could drop that link in just one more time. In that folder, you will notice the template, which actually Chris was in charge of creating, that has the different pieces, including the first few slides are almost always kind of teacher-facing language about the lesson, about extra resources, flagging if there is particular sensitive content that you should be aware of, and then starting on the slide that has the title in the purple band is the teacher-facing, or sorry, excuse me, the student-facing lesson in Google Slides. And just again, the note to delete the first few slides so that the students don't have access to those slides. And one of the things we've been working on is trying to make concise and both straightforward language and symbols, both using actual symbols and colors for where students can find certain things and where students can do certain things. Like, so you'll see here that there's a blue box for where students can record, and we've built into the template that students will be able to, you see here where it says click to add text, anywhere in here, students can add text into the table. They also have the little pencil icon to remind them of that. Each day begins with an objective that highlights some of the significant either skills and or content for the lesson. And then there's an introduction model. One of the things we've been working on, as I said earlier, is kind of building in the historical thinking tools and analysis strategies into this work. So here we have part of the sourcing tool to get students to begin thinking about sourcing and evaluating reliability, and that will be significant when we're talking about the project in a minute. And there's more introduction. We've been trying to build in as much as possible videos and other interactives that are internet-based for the students to access information. And then there's always the place for students to do independent work. In this case, they listen to a brief lecture. That's actually a lot more interesting than it looks with this picture of the professor. And then they come back to think about sourcing with some new information about the contextual or the context of this particular map. And then they have a wrap up. We've been trying to keep these lessons to about 30 minutes for high school so that students aren't taxed too much. We know one of the things we also heard is that students were having just the difficulty doing all of the work that they were being assigned. So almost all of these lessons try and get in at under 30 minutes time. And then we end with just a real quick check for understanding that allows students to kind of identify where they're at for that particular lesson. I'm just gonna go back and remind myself where I'm at for this. So again, if you look in the folder, and let me go. I've lost my way. If you go back to the folder that Chris has linked to, you will see a template for that lesson plan. I want to just take a real quick break before getting into the project-based learning and just see if there are any questions, any concerns. Chris, has anything come in through the chat? I actually am not able to see the chat while I'm talking, so I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen.
So we haven't had any questions in the chat just yet, but feel free to post them and I will pose them to Joe.
Great. So then I'm going to take back and share the screen again and move into talking about the project. So one of the things we also heard from teachers is that we wanted to have more opportunities for students to do projects over several days, projects that incorporated as much as possible engaging materials. And so in high school for Unit 5 across 9, 10, and 11, and actually in 12th grade in participation in government, there's a wonderful project, Building a Podcast. We have tried to incorporate projects as much as possible. And so one of the things you're going to begin seeing if you have been using the Teach Hub resources is a shift over to these projects. In terms of the day-to-day, it won't look very much different, although you will see in the folder, beginning not this week coming up, but the following Monday, you will see something that looks like this. And this is the overview for the project. It will tell you both what the project is. Here's a little bit of kind of student-facing directions. This is one thing we haven't shared with you yet because we're still working on developing it. But we have kind of the entire idea and we wanted to give people an opportunity to begin thinking about this before they open up the Google Drive in a couple of weeks or a week and a half and see what's there. And so for 11th grade Unit 5, we thought one way of getting students to be engaged in thinking about the Cold War, Vietnam, and even if they wanted to, going back to World War II, was to analyze a Hollywood film as a primary source. And so what they're going to do is they're going to get an opportunity. We've identified a list of, I believe, 12 films and where students can access them. And considering that not all students have access to things like Netflix or Amazon Prime, we have identified films that are available in total on YouTube as well. So students will be able to select a film. And you'll note in a minute when Jessica kind of goes over the first lesson that many of these films are films that we are all aware of. My guess is some of them are films that we've shown in your classrooms. They're going to get an opportunity to watch the film, analyze it using the Docs Teach Analyze a Film sheet, and then begin to kind of build their understanding of that film and the greater context around the creation of that film to analyze it as a primary source and to think about its reliability as providing evidence for a particular moment in time. And so again, one of the reasons I showed you the lesson for day 37 is they're thinking about a map as a reliable and evaluating a map as a reliable primary source, it's similar skills that they're going to use with this. They're going to be asked to read some context from a tertiary source, identify another source that provides greater context, contextualize the film, think about the historical circumstances leading up to its creation, and then really dig in, beginning by reading a movie review, begin to really kind of think about and evaluate that source, that film as a primary source, thinking about its audience, its point of view, its purpose, and then ultimately evaluating the film using the evaluating reliability tool. And then throughout, they're going to be each day building a slide that speaks to that aspect of the project. And then the last couple of days get an opportunity to kind of clean up their draft, and then they will hand in a Google Slides PowerPoint or Google Slides presentation about that film. One of the things you'll notice here is each day is kind of, will give you a quick overview description of what is going to happen in that day. We will link to different tools that can be used throughout the project. And then again, just the actual assignment. I'm gonna now take the screen and stop sharing. And are there any questions about this before we dig into the lesson? Because I think the lesson will help to kind of deepen your understanding of what the students will be asked to do, because it is the first day of the project. But also want to make sure kind of if people have any questions just about the project, about the timeline, or even where they're going to be able to find it, we can answer those questions now.
I've been receiving a few questions about getting a permissions window when you try to access any of the documents in the Google Drive folder. If you are getting a permissions window, that probably means that you are currently logged into a Google account other than your DOE Google account. So if you are getting that window, either try signing out of the Google account you're currently logged in on Google Drive to, and then go to drive.google.com and log in with your NYCDOE email address. Or alternatively, you can open an incognito window by pressing Shift-Control-N or Shift-Command-N if you're on a Mac. And then you can log into Drive there on your DOE address, and there shouldn't be any conflicts.
I'm gonna just take the screen real quick, because I think one of the things that's helpful is to see when you're actually logged into a DOE Google account, the little Google icon looks a little bit different. So I'm just gonna take the screen so I can show you what that icon looks like. So, of course, now it's not doing it. Let's see.
If you go to your Drive page,
yeah, there we go. So if you notice up here where my cursor is, not only do you have the little circle with the initial, but you also have the little New York City DOE logo. And anytime you're in the Drive, when you've signed in with your DOE, and again, it's your same DOE account that you've used for Outlook for years. They just, when you sign in for the first time to TeachHub, it will link your accounts. Any other questions, Chris?
Myself, let's see. I don't see any questions. If you have any questions about anything Joe has covered, just drop them into the chat and I will ask them to him. Anthony is asking, is this on TeachHub?
Is what on TeachHub?
Do you mean
the presentation or these materials?
The presentation.
So the presentation we're videoing right now or recording right now, we will send out a link to all the people who attended later, either today or early next week. And the materials, I just saw this come in the chat, the materials, any of the materials that we've gone over that are in kind of Google form are available on TeachHub, although I should note the templates that we're going to show you, or that you actually already have available to you in that small Google folder that we provided, Those templates are not. Everything that's on the Google Teach Hub in those folders for high school, for middle school, for elementary school, we have already populated the templates with lessons. And the materials that we're going to go over in terms of the project, I'm seeing Anthony's following up. So the difference between Teach Hub and We Teach is it basically comes down to this. We Teach, it has been for years now, about 5 years, the database that holds all of the DOE approved materials or DOE created materials. Most of those materials are in PDF form. What is in Teach Hub, although this is not entirely the case, but particularly in the last couple of weeks, what has been put up into We Teach, at least for social studies, has been in Google Slides, so that you can bring them right into Google Classroom and have that ability to do interaction, to add in add-ons and other things. And one thing we should note is we will be doing PDs in the future on different add-ons, but in terms of what we are adding to the Teach Hub folders, we're kind of creating things that the teachers who have the capability and want to add on things like Nearpod are able to do that. But we also wanted to create the opportunity, if someone is still comfortable, as I am, really just working with Google Slides, we're not going to add something on that actually makes it impossible for that person to use it as well.
You have another question, Joe, from Carol?
Yeah, so all of the passport units for US history are not completed. Actually, our schedule was to complete the US passports, and then we went out on remote learning, and we have been working on remote learning lessons. What I will say is the remote learning lessons from March 23rd, I think, was the first folder that was added. Those remote learning lessons till today represent the lessons that would have ended up in Passport. And one of the things that we're doing with the project that we're going to talk about, or we started talking about, and we're going to dig further into, is we're trying to create an opportunity, knowing that students aren't taking the Regents, to create a PBA that actually allows students to kind of go beyond while still building some of the same skills that would be assessed in the Regents. So they're not doing in 11th grade Unit 5 a constitutional and civics issue essay, but they are building some of the skills that would be part of the Part 2 short essay, so that teachers can still be kind of thinking about what instruction for that looks like, and what will be added in years to come in terms of Passport. But at the present, Units 1 and 2 are up. As soon as we have a kind of opportunity to catch a breath, we're going to be continuing adding the subsequent units. But at the moment, if you want the most up-to-date lessons that represent the design in Passport, Teach Hub would be the place to go for those. I love seeing Carol putting something in about the pandemic, and that you were able to take content. Hopefully that was from the lesson that was posted a couple weeks back. If people are coming for 10th grade Unit 5's assessment, they'll actually be able to see another project that builds on kind of students thinking about the current moment, in this case as an enduring issue. And we can kind of talk about some of other issues on that day as well. All right, I'm looking at time, and I want to shift over to Jessica. So I'm going to actually shut up and allow other people to speak.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jessica. Thank you for joining us today on this beautiful afternoon. So as Joe said, we've been thinking about creating a project for 11.5. And the first lesson of that project supports students in unpacking the task and helps them frame their learning over the lessons that lead them to that final project. So I'm going to share my screen with you now so that you can, and I'm going to take you through the slides for that lesson so that you can see both you can see both what we're thinking about in terms of the lesson, and then also it'll give you a good overview of the project itself. So like Joe said, this is done in the slide template that all the Passport resources are going to be put into for remote learning. Like Joe said, the template itself is meant to support students to access the lessons themselves, and also to create a streamlined interface for them to engage with the work. So doing everything in this template as much as possible limits the amount of tabs students have to have open on their device to do the work. And that also, it also limits the amount of external links they have to visit. Everything as much as possible is within the slide presentation itself to support ease of completion for students. It also, in my experience with these type of assignments, it makes it easier for teachers as well. Because the assignment is created in Google Slides, it allows teachers to just make a copy of these slides and then adjust as needed based on any assessments they've done with their students. It also makes assessment easier in terms of just grading, because all student responses are housed in one document. So you don't have to go look at a bunch of different assignments to grade the students and record the grades. It's all in one place. So this lesson, this is the cover page. This is what this is not student facing. You would delete this when you assign this to students. But this is a good slide for me and teachers in general as you're planning, because it helps anchor you in what is the standard you're going to address and assess in this lesson, as well as the focus question that you are going to expect students to be able to answer by the end. So it's included as a planning tool to support you to make sure that the lesson is aligned to standards, and also that you're able to accomplish these things by the end of the lesson. The second slide that would be deleted before you assign this to student is just some notes from us and things to think about as you assign this lesson, including information about where you may adjust, add a screencast or a voice recording, and also that these slides could be used with other remote learning tools such as Nearpod or Peer Deck. So this is the first slide that students would see. It's a welcome slide. And because this is the first lesson of the unit, it really is just an introduction to the unit itself. It has the title of the lesson. It also has information for students around the blue box and the structure for that they should expect to see. And whenever they see that blue box, they'll have a visual cue that that's a place that they're going to record their answer or be expected to complete a task. The next slide is the lesson objective. It's written in student-facing language, and we think it's important to include this up front so that students know the goal of the lesson, and it really gives them the why for the activities that they're going to engage in and lets them know right at the start what they should be able to do by the end of the lesson. So by the end of this lesson, they should be able to summarize what they need to know and do in order to be successful on the tasks and the final project, and then also they should be able to describe how to analyze a movie as a primary source. Those are the two big objectives of this lesson. And please feel free to stop me or ask a question because I can just speak and it's hard to read the room in these situations. So after the lesson objective, we get into the mini lesson. The mini lesson itself is structured to reflect an I do, we do model. And this is a place where teachers can really, once they make a copy of the slides, adjust this based on their classroom, their students, and use the mini lesson as an opportunity to connect with students. So the first slide is just a general welcome and a summary of what the unit itself is going to be. And then it starts to get into the I do, we do portion of the mini lesson of what skill they're going to be practicing. So in the mini lesson itself, it's designed to support students with unpacking the tasks and the end of unit assessment in this unit. The annotation strategy that we've incorporated is identifying no's and do's. So students are going to read descriptions of the lessons and of the end of unit assessments and use the highlight function to highlight anything they see that they're going to have to know to be successful, and then also highlight anything they would have to do, any actions or tasks they would have to complete. If your school uses a different annotation protocol, this is a place where you might adjust and insert that annotation protocol. As you can see, we also have utilizing Google bookmarks in Google Slides. There's a way to, if students are unfamiliar with the skill of highlighting in Google Slides, you can insert a slide within the presentation that gives them a little overview of how to do that. and then just include another bookmark that brings them back to the original slide. You could also include a video on that slide as well, but just to make sure that students have the tech skills to do the task you're asking them to do, sometimes those bookmarks are really helpful. We also include, this is, it's a think aloud, but it's written. So again, this is another place where this is the I do. So this is a place where as a teacher, it would be a great idea to record yourself or create a screencast walking through students through a think aloud of how to annotate a section of text for no's and do's. It can be helpful for students that need that verbal direction, and also it's another way to stay connected with your students and let them hear your voice during this time. So we bring them through this idea, just annotating what it looks like to annotate a text for no's and do's, and the rationale for that is highlighted in the thought bubbles, I suppose. And then we move into the we do section. So the directions are up here. Students would annotate the rest of these bullet points for the no's and do's that they'll need to complete in their project. And the no's, it's not a very complex text, it's just a description of the project. So it basically takes them through a description of every lesson that they would complete in this project. And I'm not gonna read it to you, but you have access to it in that folder. If anyone is still struggling with access to that, you can reach out and I'll share it directly with you. But you can see they're gonna choose a movie, they're gonna analyze that movie using the film worksheet, they're gonna have to ask a historical question, they're gonna contextualize, and then here we move into more of a you do, where there's no real scaffold here except for the directions up top with the highlight. And these are the other tasks that they would complete. The last part of the mini lesson is the description of the final project. And so again, they're gonna annotate this, students would annotate this for no's and do's. But for our purposes, this really gives us an idea of where we want students to go by the end of this unit. The final project is a slides presentation, and you can see down here with these bullet points what the components of that task would be. The students would have to create the Google Slides, they would have to include historical context of the film, pose a historical question, and then analyze the film as a primary source, choosing one aspect of the source, and then screenshotting or describing two scenes that support them in analyzing the reliability of the film as a way to answer the historical question. So like Joe said, this aligns with this, the short essay 2, I believe, on the US History Regents exam. It's the same skills that they would demonstrate mastery of in that essay response. It's just the product itself is a little bit different. To support engagement and also to show students, I think, that these skills apply to all different sorts of sources. It's not necessarily just a text. So once we move out of the mini lesson, so then the last thing students would do is just write a quick summary in that blue space, using their annotations to summarize in 3 to 5 sentences what they need to know and do to be successful. And then once they exit that mini lesson, they move into the independent work. The independent work has them practice that annotation strategy, but on a more complex text. It's an excerpt from Someday This War is Gonna End by Crystal Galen. It's taken from US History Source, I believe. I'm gonna go to Joe for that one. Is that true?
US History Scene.
Not Source.
Which is, you know, if you wanna supplement the materials that we're providing with some other things that you can pull right into Google Slides, US History Scene is a wonderful website to go to. One of the things they're doing, and this essay is actually not from this particular part of US History Scene, but one of the things that they've done at US History Scene since we've moved to remote learning is they're having, and actually the lesson that I showed you with the brief lecture by a historian on World War II maps, they have created, I think at this point, about 30 different lessons with historians picking a primary source, doing either a brief 5 to 7 minute lecture or a set of PowerPoint slides, some way of providing context for that primary source. They provide the primary source. Oftentimes, you know, it can be a work of music, it can be a map, it's a lot of different kind of interesting and engaging primary sources. So if you haven't gone to US History Scene, I definitely recommend it.
It's a great, I think it's an excellent resource. And so as you can see in this section, in the independent work, what students are gonna do is apply the annotation skill they practiced in the mini lesson to a more complex text, and then they're gonna do the same thing, they're gonna summarize at the end. So what we did was we pulled the text from the website and put it into the slides, again, to try to limit the amount of windows students have to open and to give you as a teacher a clear place to look for student work. I'm going to click through these slides. So students would just go through, they would annotate for no's and do's in this text. And this is also going to help them meet that second objective around describing how historians can analyze movies as a primary source. And then they're going to get here. They're going to type a summary based on their no's and do's that they did in the independent work to answer this question. And this question, again, aligns with that second learning objective. So you can be sure that you can measure, were students successful in this lesson? Did they meet objective 1? Did they meet objective 2? So that alignment is there. We go along with that same slide template. We have the check for understanding for students. This is helpful because you can get individual data around how an individual student felt about this lesson and what support they need, but you can also get whole class data. If all your students fill this out and most of them are in red or yellow, you might think about how you might adjust the lesson or anything you might have to reteach to the whole class. We have a wrap up here where students can pose a question or a comment, just again to build connection and then also to field any questions that they have before they launch into this larger unit. And then this is the resource slide. So that pretty much does take us through all of the slides in this presentation. I'm gonna pause now and stop sharing if I can. To just see if there are any questions or any feedback is welcome as well, or any thoughts.
I want to echo two things that Jessica said. One, it is difficult to read the room in these. So if there are people who are, if you have concerns, we actually do have an opportunity because it is a week away from when we'll be uploading these into the Google Drive. So if there are thoughts, feedback that you really think we should be thinking about as we kind of finish up this project and get it out for all of you to use, please let us know. I will also say if there are things that you want us to be thinking about kind of more broadly, please let us know that as well in terms of resources that you need. If you're seeing things with the lessons that we're creating, I will say particularly for high school, but you could tell us if there's a K-8 teacher here as well. Let us know if there's anything that you're seeing in the lessons that you want us to be doing more of, doing less of. Now is an opportunity to let us know that as well. If you've never seen the lessons and you're just like, I really want this, let us know that. So we'll kind of give you a minute. And then if there's just any other questions, I'm going to look through the chat as well, because there are a couple of questions I can answer just in the chat.
So we do have two questions, Joe. Do you want me to?
Sure.
Okay. So Carol asks, do we plan to continue doing this if we have distance learning in the fall?
If, and I want to emphasize if there is some form of distance learning in the fall, we will be here to support whatever teachers need. But let me say one more time, if we have no more information than you all have about any of this. So, but we will do, and again, now is an opportunity to let us know what you need, no matter what, whether we're back in classrooms in a very traditional setting or if we're still in a remote learning setting like this. What do you all need? Please let us know. We do want to be kind of giving you the things that you need, not the things that we think you need. Then the other question I see there is about the regents. So as I put into the chat, the Regents, of course, as you all know, was canceled for June of 2020. I believe it has also been canceled for August of 2020 as well. As of right now, January 2021 will be kind of the old US version, and that will definitely be, and then there will be, of course, the shift that has already been in place to the new global. And then June 2021 will be the first time that the US history and government exam that has parentheses framework at the end will be administered for the first time. Yeah, we will absolutely be doing work on civil liberties. I think one of the things that I've really enjoyed about, you know, a silver lining, if you will, has been the opportunity to work with Jessica and some of the other borough instructional leads on kind of getting you all the things that you most need. And so one of the things that we're talking about for 11th grade Unit 6 is a constitutional and civics issue, rather than essay, having students do a podcast on a constitutional and civics issue essay, or sorry, civil issue topic. But we are, as we did with Global, we will be developing a tool we are developing a tool for the constitutional and civics issue essay. So students will be able to kind of be taken soup to nuts through writing that essay as well for the June 2021 rollout. And then I'm not quite sure what the key for the DBQ and the new regents question comment is, if you want to kind of elaborate. So do you mean the part 2, the constructed responses, or do you mean the constitutional and civics issue essay? So the short essays. So we have been developing supporting materials for that. The state is also providing some resources. I always have some kind of hesitation with what the state puts out, quite frankly. I should probably not say that, seeing as this is being recorded. But we will do what everyone needs to support that. And also the answer to the 6 docs, I think, frankly, at this point, it's really going to be a question of what those look like and how they're kind of integrated. But as soon as we have more information about that, we'll let you know. That was yeah.
Sorry, you have another question. Moses asks, can this project be made into a global project?
Yeah, so I think one of the other things that is exciting, and I'm also let kind of Jessica chime in on this. I think if you wanted to, you could pretty much take out the content in terms of the overall project. You would have to go in and make changes. One of the things as the lessons, as we go through the lessons, because there still is some content that needs to be taught for 11th grade Unit 5, particularly around the Cold War and Vietnam. You'll need to swap some things out if you wanted to do this in global. But I will say, if you're a global teacher, the project for 10th grade Unit 5 and 9th grade Unit 5, both of those projects are really exciting. So more details on that soon. If you want, the sign-in for the presentation for those are already up on EventSmart. But yes, you could use this. Jessica, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just add that one of our goals was to create modular tasks that could be content agnostic. So you could potentially bring students through these steps because it's really skill-based. And so you should be able to swap content in and out strategically, but I think the task itself is appropriate for 10th grade as well. And 9th grade, you might just adjust it somewhat, but yes.
Are there any other questions, concerns, thoughts? Do you want us to go back and cover anything that we haven't? There are a few other little things that I want to kind of highlight right at the end, but I also want to give people an opportunity if you have any other questions, concerns, thoughts at this point.
Sure. So Moses asks, he's looking for additional projects for global. Where can he find those?
Additional projects for global. So if you go into the Teach Hub, there are lessons that could absolutely be developed into for both 9th and 10th grade projects. We've been trying to respond, and as I said earlier, one of the things we heard, we were originally kind of doing lessons that were very specific to the passport. So that meant that there are assessments. There are lots of assessments kind of a, I won't say traditional because they're in a way that can be used in this remote environment, but they are more kind of the on-demand kind of ilk. And we heard a need for these projects that are less on-demand, more of the PBA model. So we're developing those. But if you go into the 9th and 10th grade folders in TeachHub, each lesson has assessments, but there are also larger assessments that you will find in those folders as well.
I'll also say that if you're looking to do a podcasting project, 12th grade Unit 2, Participation in Government's project is on podcasting. So if you take out the participation in government content and insert whatever the focus of your unit is, it should carry over well. A lot of the tools are more built around authoring and creating a podcast and what that process looks like. So you can just kind of swap out the content for what you need. Same goes for 11th grade.
All right. I want to be respectful of time. So just a couple other things in terms of next steps and other things that we are working on. Just quickly, again, gonna go back here. On this sheet, and Chris, if you wouldn't mind kind of dropping this in one more time, if you go to the folder and then go on to the agenda for today, you'll notice that there are additional resources. If you go to that link under part 5, other resources, you can sign up for our newsletter. One of the things that is forthcoming, I will go over in a second after Jessica talks about the wonderful website that the Bronx Borough Center has created that anyone in the city, actually anyone anywhere, can use, is we are beginning to do some other remote PDs, including a LGBTQ book talk series. If you have not signed up for our newsletter, if you're not on our distribution list, that's going to be the primary way that we get this information out. But for the LGBTQ book series, if you are one of the first 47 people to sign up and you attend, you will receive a class set of 30 copies of the author's book to use whenever you are able to use hard copy books again, that will be delivered to your school. So look for that. The first one is scheduled for next Wednesday, and I believe there are no seats available with the book sets, but there are seats available if you want to just attend the talk. So that's something to kind of look forward to. We are also going to be doing more and more PDs, and again, many of them much less kind of front of the room talking head, more opportunities for you all to interact and plan and work with one another.
Joe, we're getting a few questions for where people can sign up for the LGBTQ book talk series.
Yeah, so that should be coming out in the distribution list in the emails in the next day or so. We've sent that out and we'll be sending it out again. So again, click on if you're not on our distribution list, but likely if you signed up for this from our email, you are on our distribution list. If someone sent you this link to sign up for today, you're the person who's going to need to click on that distribution list. So with just a couple of minutes remaining, I'm going to hand things over to Jessica, who's going to talk about the website that the Bronx Borough Center has developed.
Thank you. So on the agenda, everybody should have a link to the Bronx High School remote learning website. I'm just going to share my screen again. So up in the Bronx, the high school districts got together. What we found was that there were a lot of links and resources being shared. And so what we wanted to do was to curate resources and provide a resource itself that's quick and organized for people to try to find what they're looking for. So we developed this website. There is a K-8 website as well that I can send the link to, but this is the high school version. And so the homepage itself just summarizes and gives you an idea of what is included in the website. home tab right here is going to show you what the different pages are. So the pages I'm just going to show you right now, we have one for social studies. Okay. And what we have there are links to Teach Hub where you can go and access resources. We have a link to the spreadsheet that has different remote learning opportunities that's been curated by the Central Social Studies team. And then we also have different assignment templates that you can access and make copies of for either a Google Doc lesson or a Google Slides lesson and additionally the project-based learning template that we shared with you today. And then down below are just different curricular resources and then remote learning tools that you can access. Another really helpful section is the Google Classroom tutorials. If you're struggling with any element of Google, if your school is using Google Classrooms and there's anything that you're struggling with, there's a lot of how-to videos housed here. Additionally, the G Suite tools as well, if there's anything there that you'd like to learn about or has been a challenge for you. The last page I'm going to show you is the tools for remote teaching and learning. So here we've taken, just based on all the resources that are shared, we've organized different links for different remote tools based on how it might be helpful for teachers. So in terms of providing feedback, we have a link to Mote, which is a great tool that you can integrate. It's a Google add-on and you can add it to slides, sheets, or Google Docs, and it'll transcribe your feedback. It will also translate your feedback into about 15 languages. And as you can see down here, we just have different tools that they're all free access right now. We haven't posted anything that has a paywall. But it's been very helpful for the teachers that have access to the website just to have a place that's not necessarily overwhelming, but that's organized, and we've used them, and we've created this website, so we have experience with the tools, so you can always reach out to us for support with any of them. The last thing I'll show you is very important. It's a self-care tab. So we have fitness and mindfulness resources for teachers. Just to acknowledge that this has been a really challenging time and to make sure that we're all taking time to take care of ourselves as well. So you have a link to that website. We update it every week. So if you want to bookmark it, check back. If there's anything that you think should be added to that website, there is a feedback form that you can give us feedback on, and you can always reach out with any questions.
Right. So, we've already gone sort of over the what's next. As I said earlier, we will be continuing to add resources. We will be continuing to add PDs. I want to give people just an opportunity before we end, because I don't believe you'll be able to access any of the links that have been shared in the chat, to go back into the chat and grab any of the links that you need. But also, if there are any kind of final questions that people have, please share them and we'll answer them, and then we'll end and send you off hopefully to a wonderful weekend. I have not looked at the weather, but I'm hoping that it's as nice on Saturday and Sunday as it is outside now.
Also, if you haven't yet signed in for today, just take a moment to do that.
I do want to thank both Chris and Jessica for co-facilitating with me today. It's kind of weird to say co-facilitating when we're really just talking. For co-talking with me today. And thank all of you for giving up an hour on your Friday afternoon to join us and think about what hopefully will be an exciting project, and most hopefully something that is useful for all of you. If you have any questions that you want follow-up on, one of the things I realized that I did not share was my email address. That's JSCHMID, as in David, @schools.nyc.gov. I'll put that into the chat as well. And you can always, any general questions you have, send to socialstudies@schools.nyc.gov. If you don't have any follow-up questions, are there anything that I'm missing, Chris? Let me just put my email in, and then I will have a wonderful weekend. Thank you all. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jessica. See you all soon. And yeah, go enjoy the sun.
Yeah.
I saw a couple of people who were outside. That was awesome. That's really how we should be doing these things. Like, if we're going to be doing this, we should be doing it outside. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Talk to you all soon.